Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Trek Mission Log. My name is Jason Gilbert. Last week I reviewed part one of a two-part episode from the original series called The Menagerie, and what a joy that was for me, and I'm eager to bring part two to you today. If you enjoy this content, would you please subscribe to this channel? It would really help me out immensely. Also, you can check me out on Instagram at Trek Mission Log, and we can interact with each other there. This channel is slowly growing, and I thank you for that. So please keep in mind that when we do reach 100 subscribers, I will be doing a giveaway. Now, today, we will be looking at the conclusion, the episode entitled The Menagerie Part 2. This is Season 1, Episode 13. It aired on November the 24th, 1966. The episode was written and produced by Gene Roddenberry. It was directed by Robert Butler. So, let's dive into the conclusion of this incredible story. The Enterprise is en route to the forbidden planet of Talos IV. We see Spock pleading guilty for unlawfully taking a starship. In a captain's log, Kirk is wondering why Spock wanted so badly to take Pike back to Talos IV. And in the captain's log, Kirk summarizes the events of the Menagerie Part 1. The images that they are seeing in Spock's court-martial are coming from the planet Talos IV itself. We then see the closing moments of the first episode before we fade into the title sequence. The court-martial of Spock continues. Commodore Mendez reiterates that Starfleet orders no contact with Talos IV. Spock told him that he had no choice. Spock said that the Keeper has taken control of the screen, and he asked Captain Pike if he wanted to continue or if he understood, and Pike blinked yes. We then see more footage from the cage of Pike waking up in a menagerie or a cage. The Talosians communicate with each other telepathically. Pike tries to break the glass a few times, and he vows to them that he will break out of this cage. We then see images of Spock's deliberation with the crew of how everything that they saw on the planet had been an illusion. They decide they try to use the ship's power to break into the cave where Pike had been taken. We then see the illusion of Pike on Rigel 7 that was created by the Talosians out of Pike's thoughts. This is a fight against a barbarian. We then go back to the court-martial. Spock explained that they could reach into his brain and make him live any time, place, or situation they wished. They are all seeing this play out on the monitor. And then they witness the fight against the barbarian. All illusion. Pike is victorious and is immediately taken back to the cage. At that point, the monitor goes off. We're back in the court-martial. The feed gets cut off because the Talosians can see that Pike is fatigued and they want him to rest. This leads Kirk to believe that the Talosians care for Captain Pike. Commodore Mendez is growing impatient, but Spock said that he had to wait until the footage can resume. The court-martial reconvenes. Kirk, in a personal log, said it is the strangest evidence ever heard in a court-martial on a starship, and then he indicates that the ship is only 1 hour away from Talos IV and will soon be in violation against Starfleet General Order 7. The footage on the monitor resumes. We see Pike interviewing Vina about the Talosians. He wants to know how to block them from probing his thoughts. Vina refuses to answer. We see how the crew uses a large laser cannon to break through the rock. It appears as if it had no effect. However, the doctor said that they may have broke through, but may be seeing an illusion that they didn't. Meanwhile, Vina shares some information about the Talosians about how they can punish people if they don't cooperate. We learn how they went underground because the surface became uninhabitable. They developed mental powers, and the surface is just now, after many years, becoming capable of sustaining life. The Talosians are collecting male and female specimens in an attempt to bring life back to that planet. Pike is then given a taste of punishment, and we see him suffering in flames, which is actually a depiction of hell. Pike then, in a very primitive emotion, lashed out and actually startled the Talosian. And at that point, he discovered that they cannot see through primitive thoughts like hatred. He's then given an illusion of a picnic on Earth with Vina, and this comes from his thoughts of home. He told Vina that he was attracted to her, and after that he is sent to an illusion where he is a traitor on Orion, where Vina is dancing provocatively as a green animal slave girl. Back in the court-martial, Kirk and Mendez talk about green Orion slave girls and how no human man can resist them. As the story unfolds, Kirk sees that with every illusion on the monitor, Pike was beginning to weaken. We see a landing party prepping to beam down, consisting of Spock, 3 other male crew members, number 1, and a female crew member. But only the females ended up being beamed down. They materialize in the cage with Pike and Vina. They are brought down by the Talosians as choices for Pike to spend his life with on Talos IV. Pike fills his mind with hate to block the Talosians from probing his thoughts, and so they punish him. In the next scene, we see Pike subduing the Keeper as the Keeper was trying to sneak in to take their phasers. Pike tries to use the phaser to blast through the glass wall of the cage. They were using illusion to make it appear like it didn't happen. They release the illusion. There's a gigantic hole in the wall of the cage, and so Pike and the crew and Vina leave the cage. In the court-martial, the feed suddenly stops. Spock is puzzled as to why, and he asks Pike to vote to wait so that he can have a chance at life. Kirk then asks Spock, is it living, when he would be like a zoo animal for the amusement of his keepers? And Spock said that there's more to watch and nothing comes on the screen. Mendez asked Pike if Spock is guilty, yes or no. Pike blinked yes. Mendez also voted guilty as charged. It was now up to Kirk, and Kirk also voted guilty as charged. On the bridge, we see the Enterprise approaching the planet Talos IV. Talos is in control of the vessel. Spock said that they will now see why he did what he did, and the video feed resumes on the monitor. Pike, after leaving the cage, is back on the surface with his crew members and the Keeper. The Keeper wanted him to choose a female to live their new life on the planet's surface. Pike surprisingly said if he can see proof that his ship is out of danger and that the 2 crew members can be sent back up to the ship, he would stay with Vina. At that point, number 1 puts her phaser into overload, and it is only a matter of time before it explodes and kills them. The other Talosians come to the surface, and number 1 reverses her phaser overload. After probing human history, the Talosians discover that humans hate captivity in any form, and therefore they can't use the humans for their purposes and needs. Pike said, "So that's it, no apology." The Talosians said that their unsuitability made the Talosians' extinction inevitable. Pike now wants to go back to the ship and invites Vina to join him, and she said that she can't. The Talosians then reveal Vina's true appearance: old, sick, and severely disfigured. Out of their care and compassion for her, they give her an illusion of youth and vitality. At Pike's request, they give her back her illusion. Pike is then beamed aboard the ship. We are now back at the court-martial. We now understand why Spock did what he did. He brought Pike to Talos IV so that he could live out his days with the illusion of vitality and health, and not be bound and helpless in that chair. Kirk also now understands. As Kirk talks to Commodore Mendez mysteriously disappears. Kirk then receives a thought transmission from the Keeper. The Commodore was an illusion all along. The Keeper invites Pike to remain on Talos IV, unfettered by his present condition. The decision is Kirk's and Pike's. Kirk said to Spock that he could have come to him and explained, and Spock said that he didn't want Kirk to have to face the death penalty. Just then, Uhura relays a message to Kirk from Starbase 11. They too saw all the video from Talos IV. They said that General Order 7 is suspended on this occasion, and that no action against Spock will be taken. It is now up to Kirk on how to proceed. So Kirk walks over to Pike and asks if he wants to go to Talos, and Pike blinks yes. Kirk asks Spock to take Pike to the transporter room, and Spock thanks him. Kirk orders Spock to return to speak with him about his recent tendency towards flagrant emotionalism. Spock said he feels that he has been logical about the whole thing. We now see Pike on the planet, young and healthy again, with Vina. The Keeper said, "Captain Pike has an illusion. You have reality. May you find your way as pleasant." At that, Kirk is seen smiling with amazement. All is well, and the episode ends. The conclusion to the epic two-part Star Trek story, The Menagerie. Now, I mentioned in my previous video that I absolutely love these two episodes. I have watched them both several times throughout the years. This is the first time, however, that I watched it analytically. Although this is still one of my favorite original series episodes, there were a couple of things that stood out to me that would put this in the negative camp. But I still love this episode. So I'm going to mention the things I love first, and then I'll talk about the things that I didn't like so much. First of all, I loved the tension between Spock's Vulcan and human sides. It was played out perfectly in part 2. His care and compassion for Captain Pike drove him to hijack the Enterprise and take Pike to Talos IV. However, during the court-martial, he tries to be the logical, subdued Vulcan. Leonard Nimoy was definitely the star of these two episodes. Also, in the opening moments of episode 2, we see where Spock actually pled guilty to the crimes for which he was accused, whereas in the first part, it was alluded to in a captain's log. The opening sequence to part 2 was absolutely fantastic. It was dramatic, it was powerful. I loved the flashbacks to the original story of the cage and how these episodes brought that story into Star Trek lore. Great storytelling. The science fiction elements were good, even without incredible special effects. The idea that right from the time they departed Starbase 11 till they got to Talos IV, the Talosians, with their powers of illusion, presented the entire ordeal with Captain Pike's first visit to Talos IV, and throwing in for surprise, Commodore Mendez was also an illusion right from the time the shuttlecraft was en route to the Enterprise and throughout the whole court-martial. I just felt that was absolutely brilliant. Captain Pike in Episode 1 was opposed to the idea of going to Talos IV, but when the invitation was given for him to live his days unfettered by his condition with the illusion of health, he indicated that's what he wanted. And when Kirk asked Spock to take Captain Pike to the transporter room, Kirk said, "Thank you, Mr. Spock," and Pike blinked once for yes. I just felt that was a very beautiful and moving moment. Finally, Kirk's expression when he saw Pike on the planet in a picture of perfect health was fantastic. Now, people could say whatever they want about William Shatner's eccentricities. I want to go on the record right now to say that he was a very fine actor, and he did a super job in this episode. A great conclusion to a great story. And now for the negative elements. The first and most obvious thing is that in the first part, McCoy and Scott were present in the court-martial. McCoy was part of the proceedings, and Scott was there to operate the monitor and control the lighting and such. Technical support. They are nowhere to be seen in part 2. Now, as I mentioned, I've seen these episodes numerous times and I've never noticed that, but this time, watching it analytically, it is very noticeable and it distracted me. I assume that they weren't included in part 2 because of financial considerations. As far as flow from part 1, it was very distracting and I felt it was a stupid decision. However, they did bring a conclusion to the story. Secondly, the whole of part 2 is the court-martial while watching material from the cage. We see a very brief instance where we see the bridge as the ship approached Talos IV. I don't recall seeing Uhura in the episode, but we did hear her voice when she relayed the message from Starbase 11 near the end of the episode. It would have been nice to see the crew in operation throughout the episode like we did in part 1. A third thing that made me laugh a little, Spock was asked to take Captain Pike to the transporter room. The very second Spock left the room, the very second, Kirk receives a message from Talos showing Pike on the planet joining with Vina. That means that Spock moved Captain Pike in that chair faster than warp speed to get Pike to the transporter room and transport him down. Finally, and perhaps most seriously, the lack of Shatner chops is very disappointing. Perhaps we'll see some more in future episodes. Now, because episode 2 had these few negative things that stood out, I am going to give the Menagerie Part 2 4 out of 5 Starfleet insignias for awesomeness. It was a great conclusion, but to me, Part 1 was far superior. Well, I want to thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the Mission Log. I want to invite you to leave a comment down below on how you feel about this episode. Listen, I enjoy good, healthy debate. Even if you disagree with my assessment of this, that's okay. All I ask is that we remain respectful of each other, and that we keep the comments profanity-free. I'd like to invite you to join me next week as I review the episode, The Conscience of the King. And again, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing and give this a thumbs up. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.